Good afternoon and welcome to the second in a series of seminars on Bengaluru mobility. Bengaluru moving again after the COVID lockdown. And this is a five-part which has been launched by Bengaluru Needs You and the Resurgent India Trust along with Purpose. And we are in this examining a range of issues related to how to people and even things moving in Bengaluru once again after the extraordinary experience that we all had where we essentially stayed home wondering when the crisis and the virus would leave us. Unfortunately, it has not left us, but we still have to figure out how to take on the world once again, re-engage activity with the economy, with society, and to do it with utmost care. And one of the key enablers of mobility in Bangalore over the last few years has been the development of a whole series of services that have taken advantage of the internet, and both in enabling taxis and scooters and other kinds of mobility options which allow people not to necessarily own a vehicle, still use a vehicle. And so two representatives from that community. We have a representative from Ola, and we have Roti from Bounce. Along with that, we have a range of services also that have emerged that, again, take advantage of the internet and various apps to help people get access to goods and services more easily. And we have two examples here also participating in this workshop, and that is Gitanjali Swami of Dunzo and Ganesh Kollegal of Swiggy. So let me just take a second to introduce Anand Subramanian, who is the Senior Director and Group Head of Communication at Ola. He's been in the, he's been in the start years now, and with Ola itself for 8 years. He's been involved with Ola launches across cities, getting message, getting more and more to embrace this platform. And along with all this, he's got some amazing stories about entrepreneurial engagements, his involvement with he sits on the boards of a couple of called Clareco and Jerry Care. He's been featured as amongst the 100 most important communications professionals, 40 under 40, etc. He holds a PGP in executive leadership from the SEMLD in Pune and a diploma in social entrepreneurship from ESIM Hyderabad. So Anand has been very kind, and he's going to anchor this discussion and take the discussion forward. Anand, thank you for joining us, and I hand over the mic to you. Please take this discussion forward. We're looking forward to a very engaging session as we think about how the internet enabled possibilities for all of us in Bengaluru.
Thank you, Professor Gowda. Such a pleasure to host this very, very eminent panel, and on an agenda that is so very pertinent to all of us today. Bengaluru is home to every one of the businesses here. Be it Swiggy or Bounce or Dunzo or Ola. We're all as the internet calls us, peak Bengaluru companies, right? And it's very interesting to have everyone on the same platform talking about the most pertinent issue, which is the revival of the city from what is encapsulated us over the last quarter. Right, COVID has obviously changed a lot of things. Bengaluru continues to be one of the most important cities, definitive in shaping India's place, in the global scenario. COVID has obviously changed a lot of things for us, but more important, it had a very deep impact on the lives and the businesses, right? Which connect these two, which is precisely what the four organizations here are today. Through this discussion, we aim to reflect on what has gone behind us, right? But more importantly, capture what lays ahead of us and what we need, from the government, from policymakers, from the industry, from various partnerships to come out stronger from this phase than ever before. Quick introduction illustrious panel that we have. Vinay is the head of corporate development and strategic finance at Bounce. Been with the organization since very initial days. Brings over 15 years of experience across Deloitte, PwC, Healthium, and has successfully handled various mergers, takeovers, joint ventures, and fundraisers. Welcome, Vinay. Thank you for joining in. We have Ganesh, who is the AVP of Public Policy, Advocacy, and Government Relations at Swiggy. Ganesh comes with over 20 years of experience in a wide range of work that spans across public policy, public affairs, government relations, advocacy, and communications. He's also held key roles in Amazon, helping Amazon India across its various businesses, leading policy for them before Swiggy. He's worked with Tide, worked with Novo Nordisk, BATF, Horizons, Porto Novelli, amongst others. Thank you, Ganesh. Wonderful to have Swiggy on this panel as well. Lastly, we have Gitanjali. Gitanjali Swami heads legal and public policy at Dunzo. She's also a partner at NDS Law Partners, a qualified attorney, and focuses on assisting people in fast-growing businesses to create and nurture very strong relationships within the legal structure. She's part of the Dunzo compliance and legal team since very early days, again, 2015, and is an alumnus of the prestigious Nalsar. Thank you, all three of you, to make this panel what it is. Let's get straight to it. The impact of COVID on all our businesses has been, as deep as it can get. But I think I'd like to have each of you comment, very, very briefly and quickly in 2 to 3 minutes on the various initiatives and stellar initiatives that you guys have taken up, each of your organizations have taken up over the last 2-3 months to be able to help the business, help the people, help citizens, help your own people. We're part of the gig economy at some level. If you could take 2-3 minutes, we'll start with you, Gitanjali. Things that Dunzo did for the ecosystem. You guys were working in this time as well, so a lot of precautions that you might have put in place. But quickly, if you can, summarize what the last 3 months have been in terms of what has happened at Dunzo for customers and your own people.
Well, to summarize it in one word, it was unbelievable. I don't think any of us ever expected anything like this. And when it actually hit us to get the entire team and infrastructure moving, first from work to home, our support infrastructure, helping partners on board, everything happened overnight. And it was fantastic to see the team come together to help this work. But I think at the same time, there was a lot of requirement for us to be on the road and then just help everybody get their essentials, because this was a situation that nobody could, and the initial days, if you would all remember, there was so much uncertainty on whether we could be on the roads, what the regulations said, how could partners be safe on the road. So from helping getting clarity on that to getting people to be on the road to help make sure people got their essentials as and when was required. And also that merchants could stay, to stay live on the platform, continue with supply so that their businesses weren't affected to the point that they needed to shut. There was a lot of movement that happened from different parts and different people. So once we were able to stabilize, and we did get a lot of support from, the government as well to help us understand how to sort of keep the fleet on board, on ground. And after the initial hiccups, we were able to sort of stabilize that and continue. We were able to stabilize and continue. In addition to that, I think there have been multiple initiatives at different funds, which as a business side, we've been able to do for the partners and the merchants to make sure that they continue to operate and supply was there. At the same time, there were other organizations that reached out that needed help, particularly for senior citizens and the more underprivileged sections. And so, there were initiatives to work with those sections as well. And trying to make sure in the larger scheme of all of this, everybody was safe, safety precautionary measures, and what were those very essential details that were needed to make sure the partners who are actual warriors on the street were also safe. So one could sort of talk about each of these, but this is broadly how we sort of approached it, looked at it, and then we're on ground.
That's
Happy to
very
elaborate
useful.
on any parts.
Absolutely. I think it is, services like Dunzo and Swiggy and Zomato that really were the lifelines of the cities at some level, right? And I think incredible work by the partners, and we will come to the people angle very shortly. In fact, most of the businesses of the internet economy, were allowed to operate, albeit at minimum levels. At Ola, for instance, the entire mobility industry came to a standstill. Livelihoods were at stake. There was no earning whatsoever for drivers who actually have their daily income coming in, and that triggered us to set up a bunch of initiatives. One was the Drive the Driver Fund, which was for drivers across the country, not restricted to Ola, and their families, which helped them with essential supplies, which helped them with medical emergency funds. We also, for specifically Ola partners, extended liquidity and short-term credit, that we could set off against their future earnings much later. I know for a fact that Swiggy did a bunch of very, very interesting things for its partners too. Ganesh, if you could talk about what the last 3 months were like, the range of initiatives that you guys put in place for your partners, for customers, for the business as a whole.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for calling me to this discussion, and look forward to hearing a lot of views. And Anand and Rajiv and everyone, the last 3 months, well, we were one of the fortunate few companies that actually could operate under a lot of constraints. Like Anand was saying, like everybody else, and we were initially operate in 1/3 of the cities. We normally operate in about 540 cities across the country. It started with something like 150 or 200. Then we are now pretty much across the country in 540 cities, nearly 500 cities we are operating. And well, like everybody else, we went through our own this thing when there were orders, but it had fallen significantly. And then we are slowly back on track, and then we are slowly going towards some semblance of volume. And some of the things we did was we had in the key cities grocery deliveries through Super Daily. We were servicing on an average about 100,000 citizens in the key cities of Gurgaon, Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, Hyderabad, and Chennai. Then, the grocery business, many of the government entities across the country requested us to start grocery deliveries, and we tied up with the local kiranas and the government, grocers, and then we ramped that up to pretty much across the country. And that was one, way we could contribute to the groceries being given to the citizens, both in the containment zone as well as non-containment. And we did some innovative things, like in containment zones, we had a runner model where a person would come up to the barricaded point, and then there would be a person inside who'd take this particular delivery to the citizens, since nobody was allowed to go in or come out. So that was another innovative thing. And then we had Hope Not Hunger program rolled across about 25 cities approximately in the country, where we were giving hot hygienic meals from our corporate kitchens to the homeless, the migrant laborers, and the various citizens in need. And we did about 3 million odd meals. We were serving both lunch and dinner. And in Kerala, we actually supplied the request of the government to the frontline workers like the police, and then the hospital workers in both Trivandrum and Cochin, both a hygienic and a very high nutrition meal for about nearly about 20 days. So we did a lot of innovative stuff, and uh, I mean, we have been doing our bit during this pandemic to service our customers. And and you must have heard and then must have read in the newspapers that we are partnering with various governments in about three states, delivering alcohol to home so that social distancing is maintained and people don't come out on the streets and then stand in long queues. So these are the various initiatives we've been doing here.
Fantastic, fantastic. Vinay, yours is a very different business. You don't rely on people. You rely on assets, if I may, right?
Yeah,
Of course, driven by people, of course.
absolutely.
But what really changed in these 3 months? I'm sure your first step must have been to protect assets and the people who help move them around, as well as serve and service them. Walk us through, quickly on what did Bounce do in this quarter? How did things change for you guys?
Sure. I think firstly, thanks and nice to be part of this group here. And yeah, I think like Gitanjali was mentioned, uncertainty was the first thing that kind of hit us all, right? We were not sure in terms of how long this is going to last, how it's going to pan out, etc. So, but even before the government mandated lockdown really kind of came in, we were sensing that something's becoming massive. So we were already strategizing in terms of how to kind of gear up for this, especially from, like you mentioned, asset safety, and more importantly, safety of all our employees and customers. So we obviously did the government mandate in terms of the lockdown and kind of pulled our services out. Having said that, in spite of the lockdown and discretionary travel completely coming to a halt, there were still a lot of people who were a part of the COVID, in terms of the frontline warriors who had to move from places, right, from point A to point B. And not all of them were having their own mode of commute. A large number of them were depending on public transport, including buses, metros, etc. So we thought, this was a time for us to step up and, not be, really looking at catering only to the consumers, but why not look at this opportunity to serve the community this way? So we partnered with, quite a few agencies, government agencies also, and, gave our vehicles at a very, very, in some cases free of cost, and in many cases at a very low cost, and ensured that, the people who were participating in the COVID activities were actually given vehicles. Um and as we started resuming, I'm not calling it normalcy, maybe the new normalcy or whatever, once the activities kind of started coming back up, safety was of primary focus. So we kind of made a few tweaks in our models where we kind of brought about well sanitized bikes. We removed helmets which otherwise used to form a part of the service. We removed helmets. We no longer give helmets now because we kind of ran a awareness program around for all our consumers and etc. So where they bring their own helmets. So this was primarily what we kind of did in that period. Uh, but yeah, like I think Ola or Uber and us, I think we've been badly affected because obviously mobility has come to a standstill. People are no longer traveling in places. But whatever little travel or commute that's happening, we are happy to be a part of it, and we've seen that things are picking up. Perceivably, we are one of the safer modes of commute now as an option. So people bring their own helmet, and even if you were to take the additional caution of sporting a pair of gloves, then you can pretty much stay free from contamination to a large extent. So yeah.
Right, which is precisely what I was coming to next. I'm saying, each of us, for the roles that we play in the Bengaluru economy, right, have a massive responsibility in this revival, right? Be it ensuring that drivers are trained, to sanitize vehicles, to sanitize high touch points, or ensuring that there is a separation, a cockpit available for the driver to minimize any kind of interaction with customers, or ensuring that there's fumigation done, things that we are doing on our side. I'm sure there are a lot of SOPs that each of your organizations have put in place, keeping in mind what we call the new normal now, but seems to be significantly the way forward. Ganesh, if I could start with you, what are the range of things that Swiggy has undertaken over the last few weeks, if I may, as slowly begin to come back and revive in the current scale, right? And how are these long-term initiatives really going to change the experience for consumers and your delivery partners?
Yeah, you're right. Like the new normal or the new situation called for a lot of actually education, understanding first the SOPs, educating the stakeholders of the SOPs, which was critical. So we had to work with multiple stakeholders. One is we worked with our delivery partners, so we had to we provided across the country sanitizers and masks. That was a huge logistics because there was no courier going, and we had to speak to various people at various points, and then who supplied these masks and sanitizers. So every delivery partner was equipped with the mask and a sanitizer, enough for his supply for his activity. Then the bags, were sanitized. There was an SOP created, and then every day, multiple times, it would be sanitized so that the customer comfort is ensured. Then we work with we have these hubs where the delivery partners were trained, and then the distribution of the masks and sanitizers also happened. Then we pushed out a lot of video training tools to the delivery partners for them to understand, what are the SOPs they need to follow. So that was for the delivery partners. Second, we worked with our partner restaurants to make them understand that for the customers' comfort, what are the things that they need to ensure in terms of the kitchen sanitization, in terms of the kind of protective gear the chefs and others have to wear, so that the same was actually conveyed to the customers, saying that these restaurants are following these kind of protocols, and then so that it's safe for you to order. Because you saw that there were a few incidents, like in Delhi, the pizza outlet from where one of their deliveries happened, and unfortunately for another one of the other companies, that he turned out to be COVID positive. They had to shut down, and then there was a lot of actually angst among the customers, saying that pizza deliveries stopped. People stopped ordering pizzas. This happened in a few other cities also. So that was ensured, and restaurants also understood their responsibility, and then they complied with it. Then, of course, with all the bigger chains, it was much easier because they were in sync. It was these smaller restaurants that we had to train and work with them in terms of sanitization. And our own kitchens, for our private labels, etc., we follow very stringent sanitization norms, and the protective gear for our chefs, the temperature checks. And then you must have observed, if you have ordered recently, that along with the order, the delivery person's temperature is also actually mentioned. So a lot of these things. And then the contactless delivery, that was another thing that we started pioneered to begin with, for both the groceries as well as the restaurant deliveries, where we said, like, it'll be placed in a particular place, and then the delivery partner will wait, and then the customer will come and pick it up. So there is minimum contact. And then we this dirty cash thing, so we eliminated COD, and then it's all digital payment. So there was also our contribution in terms of the digital payment effort. So various efforts. And of course the office was fumigated. Whatever little very skeletal staffs for maintenance, somebody has to be there.
Sure.
So the whole place was fumigated, sanitized, and all that. And of course, very, very negligent amount of people are going to the office. If
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. So those were the efforts that we took.
That's
Sorry.
brilliant, Ganesh. Gitanjali, with Dunzo, the complexity gets a little more. You may not necessarily have a vendor. You may necessarily not have a merchant. It could be peer-to-peer, deliveries. So the amount of confidence that you would need to build in amongst consumers is going to be significantly high. And there also the kind of responsibility that the platform would need to take to ensure adherence to protocols are also going to be high. What are the various initiatives that Dunzo is undertaking in these times and in the way forward to ensure that confidence to keep things moving is still on?
Right. So you're absolutely right. For us, I think the fundamental thing was that we need to keep moving. We need to stay on ground. We need to get people their essentials, but in a safe manner for the merchant partner and the user. Right. This was very critical across the board. So while we've also done the, masks, sanitizers, gloves, temperature checks, sanitizing bags, all of that, it was a little complex for us because we also have non-partner stores. So the opportunity was all the partner stores were continuously sensitized about, these issues. And as Ganesh said, there was excessive education to the partners on, if they were to go to a non-partner store, what are the precautions that they would have to follow. On the app itself, in addition to all of these measures, what started happening was there were a couple of things we introduced at the product phase itself to say, how do we sort of throttle ordering so that, people don't order from stores at a bulk and then there's crowding in that store. So, the order itself at a product level itself was managed so that it didn't, at least through the app, the orders didn't require crowding at certain stores. So that was one of the measures that we took to plug in very quickly. The other thing we did at the product level was to make sure that people weren't allowed to order excessively and hoard, right? Because we wanted to make sure the supply was anyway limited. So we wanted to make sure supply was there through and through. But in terms of the education, we to be the hardest, the most challenging, but the most important as well, because you cannot always have ground level control. So the education, we moved to also educating people in vernacular, right? Constant communication so that they would be able to understand it in any language that we were able to help them understand this whole, the requirements and the SOPs. Then there were smaller things, right? The team was always on ground talking to the partners, even doing like photograph checks and stuff like that, so that we were able to see, at least to the extent possible, that compliance was happening for their own and user safety. So in addition to, of course, all of the SOPs that we would do normally, these were some other measures also that we took to be able to communicate and educate our partners and merchants.